When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind to Raw. It's John Pollock here alongside Wai Ting for a show that will... Wait, what are we going to talk about? I guess a few things happened on Raw. There's a COVID-19 test in WWE, and we're going to have a guest on the show. There's an insane lawsuit involving WWE. I don't know where to start. My head's spinning.
Dude, there's so much to talk about, and I mean, we just saw the greatest wrestling match ever. So, I mean, shit, the news and the monumental events just don't end in the world of pro wrestling. As you mentioned, John, we'll have WH Park on a little bit later on in the show talking about the return of New Japan Pro Wrestling and their Together, what do they call it? Together Special?
Together Project.
Together Project, of course. Two random words that, fit wonderfully grammatically together. The Together Project. We'll be talking about that with WH a little bit later on. We'll be getting to some of your feedback, but first, maybe we should just dive right into the news.
Yeah, so this just broke towards the end of Raw. This is the statement from WWE's Associate Medical Director, Dr. Jeffrey Dugas. A developmental talent who was last on site at WWE's training facility on Tuesday, June the 9th, has tested positive for COVID-19. Since that time, no other individuals that attended the facility have reported symptoms. However, out of an abundance of caution and to ensure the health and safety of the company's performers and staff, all talent, production crew, and employees on site at the training and production facilities will be tested for COVID-19 immediately. Following the test results, WWE plans to process with its normal television production schedule. WWE plans to proceed with its normal television production schedule. So this, first of all, out of the abundance of caution, all the people that may have been exposed, we are going to go and have them tested. Like, no kidding. That these people should be tested. Like, that to me is not going above and beyond. That is, to me, an absolute that anyone that could have risked exposure to this individual who is not named, of course they should be tested. I do not know when they learned of this. They were able to track the last time they were at the training facility, but I don't know when they were actually, they found out about this positive test. And on top of that, this comes on the day where they allowed a limited number of people, non-NXT trainees, to sit in the crowd section today as well. I would say that if they were aware of this test, I think that would have been grossly irresponsible if they had known this when they were making that decision. Anyway. There's a lot to take from all this.
Well, I mean, if this was a restaurant, if this was, even a hospital, if this was like any other facility but a professional wrestling company, I think you would expect that standard. But I don't know. Who knows? Because clearly this show was done from... I would assume that SmackDown tomorrow, Friday, would have been taped as well tonight, correct?
Yeah, they were doing Raw and SmackDown today, this week's episodes.
So yes. I think we can assume that both of those shows went without any sort of interruption. And so the question of when they would have discovered this it certainly is...
We don't know.
It would be really... Yeah, we don't know. But the news came out right after Raw?
This was just before Raw ended.
Okay.
So, within 15 minutes of Raw ending was when I saw it.
And, of course, they have tapings tomorrow as well, don't they?
Correct. Yes.
So, when they say that following the test results, WWE plans to proceed with its normal television production schedule. That is, I guess, saying they are going to test either right now or at the start of tomorrow and wait for the results to come back before proceeding with the tapings.
I don't know what your timeline is. I mean, it takes, it seems to be like the timeline to get like COVID-19 testing back is, 1 to 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, we also don't know what type of test though.
Well, this is not going to be just like antibody testing. This to me would have to be the full COVID-19 testing that you would have to get administered, because you want to know if it's active. Maybe in addition to the antibody testing, but it really does them no good to know if you have the antibodies, you may have the active virus. There is that chance, even if it's a small one.
Right. Yeah. So, something like this, honestly, was again, like really bound to happen, at some point, and we shall see how they deal with it. We shall see if any other cases pop up. They've, I would say, have certainly been on a very lucky streak this entire time, without any, I would say, publicly known cases. And so we shall see if there are any, larger repercussions. I mean, I think certainly a bigger question coming out of this is, should WWE be implementing testing at all times?
I think the answer to that is 100% yes. I think that there should have been testing from the get-go and not just temperature checks. I don't know what the circumstances are around how this unknown person, were they developing symptoms, and did they go check themselves out and get a test conducted on their own? I mean, what was the impetus for this person to go get a test done? Because if they were asymptomatic, I mean, who's to say how often they had been at the PC and when? Because there could have been a lag between when the symptoms developed and when this person contracted the virus.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we'll follow the story, and we shall see how things proceed tomorrow.
Another thing, and it was brought up to me tonight, is as well that as we're seeing not just the trainees that we've seen for weeks, but tonight, utilizing non-trainees as well. It was like Brian Alvarez had reported this, that a small number were going to be brought into the PC for the tapings, including some that I guess were friends of the performers, but it was a very small number. But as we watch all of these people weigh, not one mask. We have never seen one mask on WWE programming. And I can't speak to whether that is a policy or not, but it's very evident as a viewer at home watching this, and you're seeing no masks. And that's something we cannot say about other shows we're watching now, whether it be UFC, New Japan, All Japan. I mean, all these other places that are doing these empty arena shows. I have not seen one mask on WWE programming.
Well, I don't, like, the one time I do recall seeing a mask was when Hunter did that anniversary celebration deal, and then he was about to spit that water, and then there was a PA wearing a mask who was there to basically play sort of like
it's almost like a sight gag. Yeah. You're right.
Like,
you're right.
He's representing
they did have that.
He's representing like the government, mandating him to not spit that water. But we don't know if people behind the scenes are wearing masks. I would certainly hope so. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to whether or not the cameramen are, but we absolutely know. I think we could say that none of the NXT performers that are sitting in the crowds are wearing a mask. And I feel like that isn't that the case with AEW as well? Like, have you seen any of the roster wear masks?
Only, Jake had one,
and then
somewhat.
Took it off. But again,
took it off.
But they do have testing. Like they are testing everybody, and the Bucks, even on Being the Elite again, mentioned today that they are going through tests every single time, and that's something.
And the Bucks have been wearing masks. You've seen on their videos and such. But yeah, on TV you're not seeing them. But yeah, They are doing the COVID-19 tests. I think regardless, I think that masks. I think more and more it's becoming like you should have a mask,
especially if you're not testing. That is really the big difference here. And some people have brought up how New Japan's not doing all of these standard tests. Number one, they are doing antibody testing, which is, as far as we know, more than what the WWE is doing. Also, Japan and what the status of COVID-19 in that country is no comparison to what the status of COVID-19 is right now in America, and specifically in Florida. Totally different cases. So I don't think you can make that comparison. And I would say it absolutely is the responsible thing to do, at the very least, if you're not going to do testing, to allow your talent or at least, offer masks available to your talent.
Yeah. So yeah, quite a lot there to process. But as COVID-19, I don't want to say it's people are becoming relaxed to it. I think in some situations they are. In others, I think people are seeing like the certain spikes in different regions, but we're at this kind of crossroads where I think many people are just ready to see a lot of reopenings. And I think for, our bubble of professional wrestling, I think this is a stark reminder that this is still a concern. And in Florida, it's, you're seeing, a lot of cases as well that are popping up. So, the WWE is not exempt from this. And I think that this would certainly be that moment that I think you would consider that testing, to me, I think it should have been done from the get-go. I don't know if that is going to change their procedure or they're just going to move forward with this. And conversely, does this one get any more attention than the one that essentially got swept under the rug back at the beginning of all this, when there was an unnamed person in WWE who did test positive, but that did not blow up to this big story. Nowhere in comparison to, when Jacare Souza and his cornermen did for UFC. That was a much larger story.
I think the fact that they haven't been, doing testing, unlike AEW, unlike UFC, that might be an issue that is starting to come up. I feel like it's sort of gone under the radar because they haven't had any positive cases. But I think now, seeing what other companies are doing and the procedures that they're taking, and WWE in contrast, like perhaps even the biggest company out of all of them, choosing not to do testing yet, allowing people to go into the crowds, and just proceeding with like as many shows as they have. I certainly feel like that's something that will probably get a lot more attention.
So from there, we move on to an interesting lawsuit, to say the least, that is involving, there's been several of these suits that have been filed against the WWE, and they're all kind of alleging the same thing, that shareholders were misled by statements the company has made or lack thereof. And this is an amended class action complaint that's being led by the Firefighters Pension System of Kansas City, and they're representing several others as well. So it might be a case that they're kind of consolidating a number of these into one. But there was this new 140-page filing, and it covers this period from February of 2019, February 7th of last year, to February 5th of this year. And it's a series of complaints and things that they are alleging the WWE to have committed. And it goes back to their informing investors back in June of 2018 that they anticipated their revenue from current and new content agreements to grow from $235 million to $435 this year. And part of that included their deal with the Middle East, where they were on this broadcaster OSN that was up for a renewal in 2019. In the suit, they're alleging that a letter was sent by OSN in November of 2018 informing WWE that they're getting out of sports content, and therefore there would be no renewal of this deal. And it ended up with the deal actually being terminated early at the end of March 2019. And what they are bringing up here is the fact that they were not, investors were not made aware of this until much later. And when they finally were in July, they kind of pivoted from, okay, the deal with OSN is not being renewed, but we have an agreement in principle with the government of Saudi Arabia for a new deal in the Middle East and North Africa region. So an agreement in principle, they believe, was certainly overstating what was factual, that the two sides were grossly at odds when it came to a dollar figure for this supposed deal, where for the WWE's OTT service, they were asking for a reported $80 million in a licensing fee based off the projection that they would attract 100 million subscribers. An insane figure when you think about it. And the broadcaster that they're negotiating with is the Middle East Broadcasting Center, MBC, who did their own research, and they projected that they would get 6.5 million subscribers at most, which is a far cry from 100 million. So it was quite a distance for these two sides to meet. So NBC eventually raised their projection to 10 million, then to 15 million. not because they thought they were realistic figures, but they just wanted to appease WWE and work out a deal. So WWE came down from an $80 million licensing fee that they would settle for $50 million. And NBC was saying, we can't go above $14.5 million. So gigantic difference. They were significantly apart. And now this kind of moves into another event that occurred, and that was Crown Jewel last November, which we covered heavily, and what exactly went on that led to wrestlers and personnel being stranded. And we should mention that a big key to this suit is that they have two confidential witnesses, one of which is an employee at this NBC who is not named. And the other confidential witness is direct to this story about Crown Jewel, who is only listed as a wrestler that worked in the company from 2012 to this past April and wrestled on that Crown Jewel event back in November of last year. And they outline that initially he was told that the charter flight he was scheduled to leave on was delayed because the plane needed to be pulled around. After they boarded, they were removed from the airplane for 20 to 30 minutes, and this person spoke with the stewardess on the flight who told him, it seems someone doesn't want us to leave the country. From there, they were told about the mechanical issues, but this witness recalled seeing a ton of guards wearing black militia attire and wearing guns that were blocking their exit and staring at the wrestlers. The witness was aware that something was wrong and explained that a number of the other personnel were referring to this event as a hostage situation. The witness explained that he asked Mark Carano, who's their senior director of talent relations, what was going on. Carano told him that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Vince McMahon had gotten into an argument over late payments in connection to the Super Showdown event from June of 2019. And Carano also informed the witness that McMahon had cut the live feed for Crown Jewel and that this had made the Crown Prince very mad. So that is what is being alleged in this lawsuit. These are not proven, but the fact that they have a witness that it's a big difference from someone that is willing to talk about this privately and someone who, in theory, you would think would be willing to state this under oath as well. So I think it gives some credence to what we had heard last November, which this is very consistent with what we had heard from Hugo Savinovich, what had been reported in other outlets as well. And the fact that, there is, this, if you look at this lawsuit, like this is, it's pretty much like there's some great detail that this suit has gone to explain the WWE's business position and a lot of these allegations.
So basically, a group of stockholders are complaining that WWE hasn't been as transparent about the Mina deal, and as well as about what happened, particularly in Crown Jewel. And here comes all this dirty laundry.
And in concert with that is that what they believed were some unusual and suspicious amounts of stock that had been sold by executives in the company. One of the examples is Vince McMahon in early 2018 selling a ton of stock. And of course, that was when he was launching the XFL. So I don't know how you can, I don't know if that's a stretch to try and prove what they're trying to allege. Maybe they can. But also there was like other stock sold, and the defendants listed in this beyond WWE are Vince McMahon, George Barrios, and Michelle Wilson as well, who the latter two no longer with the company. But that's kind of the crux of this, that the shareholders believe they were misled and are pointing out the stock being sold. And I guess this becomes interesting if this case goes anywhere, if it actually, materializes into something, or if it just quietly gets resolved. I guess that's the next thing to watch here. But serious allegations that are outlined in this lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at the very least it proves that the reporting that was done by some great reporters during that time of Crown Jewel, there's certainly validity to it, and I would say, according to this eyewitness, very accurate. I think anybody who was doubting it, I really can't even say, because we saw like direct reaction from some of the performers that were there, tweeting it out on those particular days about their frustrations of being there. Nobody specifically saying that they're in a hostage situation or anything, but certainly incredibly antagonistic to what the company line was. And what was the company reaction? How did they try to, I guess, remember like there was that big meeting?
They did on, so this was when, they were leaving on the Thursday. That was the day of Crown Jewel, late Thursday. They get delayed. The Friday is the SmackDown where they bring all the NXT talent in. And then the Monday at Raw, they had the big locker-wide meeting and pretty much just dismissed any, like they just like wrote this off. Like it's mechanical failures and it's just, they really tried to downplay it pretty significantly. Mm-hmm. And, I spoke with people that week, ones who were over there for the Crown Jewel event, and there were people they had their questions, and there were some that they had questions like we did, and others that were upset. Like it was, and I'm sure there was a large number of them as well. When you saw the fact that you had wrestlers openly tweeting about it, that they had spouses tweeting about it, you had the whole thing about those that were that got to leave the country beforehand because they wanted them to make the top 20 that they wanted, because you did have SmackDown the next night that you had others left behind. Like that was one where you certainly questioned like how many of these people are not going to return. But that said, I mean, this deal with Saudi Arabia, all these things that have been outlined about, late payments and this and that, it seems that they're moving forward, and they were quick to have that press release announcing, we have secured a deal. It's going to be 2 events guaranteed per year, and they have moved forward with it. They did one in February, and they would have been planning for another one had the shutdown not occurred. So there's no evidence that that deal is in any kind of jeopardy, but I would wonder how many performers are outright not wanting to return or have reluctantly gone back, because February, it's not like we saw, there was also a lot less like in terms of like bodies that they flew over there for the February Saudi Arabia card than usual. Like we didn't have like our 50-man battle royal or things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I think, a case being public like this will bring back up a lot of those probably very terrible feelings a lot of that talent might have felt. I imagine a big portion of that roster who was stuck there might, were probably let go. For other reasons, not necessarily related to that, but it's been quite a while, I suppose, since then. And personally, I don't think much will really change. I mean, this whole story always just has to do with how much power the talent really have, and they have no power at all. If this was, a case where there was a union, it would certainly be something that I think would be kind of like, they would take a much deeper look at it. I think there'd be a much more, more questions to be thrown around about what exactly happened during this period. But there isn't, and I don't expect really the story to honestly go that much further.
So I just got a note here. It sounds like this is just from one source that the tapings on Tuesday are not going to be happening for WWE. They're going to be conducting testing tomorrow, and they're hoping to resume on Wednesday.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that would be the latest regarding WWE. So again, I'm just getting that note now. So
now NXT it takes place at Full Sail. That, as far as we know, we don't know anything about that yet.
And NXT was set to be taping on Wednesday. So I guess in theory, I don't know how that would work if you could pull off doing Raw and SmackDown Wednesday and NXT over at Full Sail, like how much crossover there is between crew and such, if you could do all of it on Wednesday. But it sounds like they will not be taping on Tuesday.
Well, how much of that crew that was set to be on NXT was present at the Performance Center?
Yeah, a great question.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay.
All right, and... and just the latest was WWE confirmed Edge's torn triceps. We'll get into that on Raw, but he has since undergone surgery. So now we'll await a timetable. It's probably going to be several months before he is able to return, but the surgery has already taken place.
Oh, we saw it. It's gruesome.
We got to see his triceps, the bone, right there on Raw. And another injury as well is Chris Statlander confirming that she has a torn ACL. So that's going to be a significant time out for her, which is unfortunate. She was involved in a really strong tag match last week on Dynamite, and that appears to be the match it occurred in when she dove onto Kip Sabian.
Hopefully it doesn't take her out for too long. At the same time, they seem pretty committed to her, so once she's back and ready, I imagine she'll just move right back into the same spot. Maybe, hopefully even, using the momentum of a return to even go further.
All right. A lot of news. You can go to postwrestling.com to get the latest, and we will now move on over to Raw from the Performance Center, and we open things up, and immediately we see the crowd, and there are some new faces in the crowd who are clearly not NXT trainees.
You don't think this middle-aged man is going to debut on NXT sometime soon?
I'm not holding my breath unless he's maybe a masked ninja.
Interesting. Yeah, so they've opened it up. I mean, to what did you say, John? Like friends and family and just
I don't know what the exact it sounded like it was like there were like legit fans here, and some of them I think might have been like friends of, performers or such. It was obviously a very small number. Like it seemed like it was just that one section. Like it seemed to be a very small number.
I do wonder, like, what kind of went maybe behind a decision like that, and I do wonder if it had anything to do with perhaps some of the criticism that's been laid upon this, like, very, very staged, robotic NXT crowd. I felt the chants, like, were a bit more organic today. I heard a Jerry chant during that Lana Lashley segment.
Yeah, nothing like a 25-year-old chant to really scream 2020 at you. I guess Jerry is timeless.
Timeless. They'll be chanting that in 2045.
So Randy Orton comes out to begin the show, and he walks out, and Tom Phillips announces that Edge suffered a torn triceps, and this is where we see the photo from surgery. And I guess interesting in the fact that they did not go with the storyline of him being punted as the reason. Like, you had an easy explanation for it, but maybe they believe that let's just tell the actual story. People are going to know it's a torn triceps. So they went with that. The punt was brought up, but that was not the reason for Edge's departure. It was the torn triceps.
I mean, it seemed to perhaps just add to the devastation. Not only did he suffer a punt, he also suffered an injury that's going to take him out for months. I do wonder if they'll use it perhaps as an excuse, for why he might have lost the end of the match. It's something they could rely on to say, hey, like, if I didn't get my triceps torn, I could have had you, something to that extent. But I think there's something to the idea that this news is going to be out anyway. So maybe, they'll just get the jump on it and be honest.
Orton said he humiliated Edge and wrote the final chapter in his story of redemption. He gave him closure because he knew he would never be the competitor he once was. Randy wasn't the last man standing, but he stands here victorious after the greatest wrestling match ever, therefore making him the greatest wrestler ever.
Great logic. Brilliant.
I think that's a great line to run with. I actually thought after the match that's for a heel to win that match, that's a great tagline to run with. And Randy Orton is the perfect person to have that moniker as the greatest wrestler ever.
Love it.
So he thanks Edge for reigniting the fire in him and feeling like the legend killer again because he took out a legend. He takes credit for ripping Edge's triceps clean off the bone and seems like you have another mountain to climb. And I hear that you're going to be cleared in July of 2029. And I hope our paths cross again in another 9 years. A great line here from Randy Orton, who, I mean, seems to have come out of this program with Edge while the Edge feud is on pause. This feels like Randy Orton is at his hottest since, I would say, like the Vince McMahon punt angle of a decade ago. Like he just seems to be
on fire.
Yeah, like he really feels like this is the most over he has been in probably 11 years.
There's certainly been glimpses over the past several years, of like greatness, like I like the Jeff Hardy thing was pretty good. Like even like the Wyatt stuff, I think for a time, we remember it so poorly, but I feel like there are segments here and there where he was like, he showed like the AJ stuff. Did he do something with AJ or was that Joe? Anyway, I might be getting
he did. Randy and AJ had the Mania program.
I might be getting my family stalkers mixed up here. But certainly there have been like, moments of greatness, but like nothing I would say that's been completed with a great match. And I think a lot of people will agree that last night's match was a great match, regardless of what you consider to be a match, whether or not it needed to be fully taped from start to finish without any interruptions, or if it was pieced together, whatever. It was a great performance. And beyond that, the promos have been on fire. The character work has just been so excellent. His poise, his delivery, his facial expressions. He doesn't feel like he's playing the character. He feels like he becomes the character. And that's a level of control that you aren't seeing from anybody else. Certainly in the WWE, or at least on Raw. And really within you'd be hard pressed to find even throughout the entire industry.
Christian interrupts him. He comes out and calls Randy a son of a bitch. He says Edge's career isn't over. He's never going to quit because he will get his closure on his terms, not Orton's. Orton says this is not about Christian. You're just jealous of Edge. And what you want is one more match. Christian denies this, and Orton knows he isn't medically cleared, but he has a way around that. An unsanctioned match. And he offers to have that match with Christian tonight, but the offer expires at the end of the night, and if you don't accept, well, I guess you're a coward. And Orton leaves, and leaving Christian to ponder whether this was the way around it for Daniel Bryan all those years. He could have just had unsanctioned matches year after year to get around not being cleared. I mean, he really took the long way back to WWE when he should have just asked Randy. Randy had it right off the top of his head.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was this easy. But like you have to get the person to agree, right? Like what? An active performer has to suggest it?
Did Christian have to sign anything tonight? Was there any hold harmless agreement? There was nothing of that. I think WWE, I wonder how...
Oh, there was a verbal agreement. He walked out on stage and said, I accept.
I guess they did get that recorded into the historical record. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting story. It's a hook that I think... of a man returning from retirement that you could even save it for a pay-per-view, but they decided to save it for Raw, and I think we would understand why by the end of it, but I thought it was a really good hook for this Raw.
I mean, this to me was the ultimate test of will anyone stick around for that third hour? Because, you could argue that this probably should have gone on maybe at the end of the second hour, because, I mean, just nothing, that last quarter is typically like the lowest every single week of all the quarters. They put something huge into that final quarter. We'll see if Christian, the tease of a Christian match would be enough to hook people, because, Christian, I think that means something to the audience. It's not, he isn't a gigantic star, but I think that it was certainly a big hook, I would say.
Well, the fact that you're getting the match, or at least they suggested that you would be getting the match at the end of the night rather than just, getting a contract signing or a promo. I do wonder if it would make any difference. After that,
we go backstage and Charlie interviewed Angel Garza with Zelina Vega. They replayed the final minutes of the Cruz Andrade match from Backlash. And tonight he's got a rematch with Kevin Owens. Andrade walked in, shook his hand. He hopes he beats Owens. And then I don't know what he said here. I tried really hard to make it out, and I listened to it 3 times. It seemed that he issued some kind of a warning to Angel Garza, and Vega was distraught by this.
Right. I took it to be some sort of sarcastic good luck. Almost like, you cost me my match last night while trying to help me. Well, maybe I'll try to help you tonight. That type of thing.
So we had Kevin Owens and Angel Garza. It was Andrade's music played, and he ends up coming out midway through the match. Owens just keeps attacking him, And then our prelude to the finish, the pants are off fairly early. He avoids the stunner, and Vega just gets tired of Andrade and Garza arguing, so she leaves. She's sick of this. Garza goes back to it to attack. It was weird. Early in the match, Tom Phillips noted that Kevin Owens has an injured left knee, but then later in the match, Garza's working on the right knee. So we had our knees mixed up, it seemed. Owens can't hit the cannonball because his knee buckles, but then Andrade gets on the apron, distracting Garza, and it leads to Owens hitting the stunner and winning the match in 6:42.
Yeah, so it was a match. You know, it was honestly, I paid a bit more attention just to the angle. The match itself was just a way to get to it.
I think at this point, I feel like Kevin Owens is sort of just...
Well, this is not his storyline. You know?
It's not, but the problem is he doesn't have a storyline. He just seems to be the guy that is the utility guy for these different programs. And I feel that he is someone that, how badly do they need a heel on SmackDown, that I think he could be he could be in a much better role than he is right now. This isn't an awful role, but to me, it's not utilizing this guy to his best abilities.
I think there's certainly there's always going to be the temptation to revert Kevin Owens back to being a heel because we know he is one of the best at it. They were doing pretty well with him as a babyface up until COVID kind of interrupted everything. And so I feel like they'll see it through a little bit longer, but it does feel like that, they haven't been able to build him back up to that status for, ever since he returned. So yeah, they could possibly do that.
Vega came back as they were arguing and said they need to start fighting together. They both want the same thing. So
they're either breaking them up or turning them into a tag team, Either way, it seems like they're getting a new direction, which I think I'm happy to see because these two with Zelina have been jobbed up for so many weeks now. They've really they felt pretty stagnant to me. So one of the big concerns I would say about Paul Heyman leaving the show would be to see, whether or not somebody who has been pushed recently, like an Angel Garza or Zelina Vega, will continue to receive that attention. And at least for this week, it seems like they still are.
Yeah, and I think the jury is going to be out on some of these. We'll see, Andrade and Garza. There was a time, certainly, that the show was almost being built around Zelina Vega and her squad, and that's been diminished, but that wasn't overnight. That's kind of been a progression over the last month, I would say, of them kind of being taken away from working with Drew McIntyre every week.
They're like the B-level villains, that Drew will beat up repeatedly to get to the pay-per-view.
Yeah, they went from them to Lashley and MVP. So that was kind of the transition there. MVP is in the back with Lashley, and Sarah Schreiber tries to interview them, which MVP says, "We're not talking on the record. Why don't you go back to journalism school?" And MVP says that Lashley was cheated out of his opportunity for the title the night before. So MVP and Lashley come out to the ring, and MVP says that Lana is always looking for attention and had to get involved. It's her fault that Lashley is not the champion, and if Drew has any integrity, he would give Lashley a rematch immediately. So Lana, craving the attention, comes out and says it was Lashley's idea to banish her from ringside. In the order of priorities, I colored my hair for you, and I got a divorce for you. She said that everything went wrong when MVP showed up, so MVP started yelling at her, calling her a thought.
Yeah, he did, John. What'd you make of that?
I mean...
Were you familiar with the term?
I'm sure I've heard it at some point on Riverdale, I would imagine. I'm sure that's been utilized.
First time on Raw, I feel.
Definitely a first, yes. Yeah. We broke new ground in this segment.
I mean, it's certainly a bit more modern. I think I would appreciate it if they gave bitch a rest and replaced it with thought.
She calls him a snake and said they were on a hot streak until MVP appeared, which was news to everybody. Lashley asks, "When was the last time you laced up a pair of boots or won anything? You're just busy getting likes and putting our personal life all over social media and using me to become famous." And Lana informs Lashley, "If you think I'm using you to become famous, If I wanted to be more famous, I would have slept with someone a lot more famous like Drew McIntyre.
Oh, man.
Lashley says, I want a divorce, and MVP is ecstatic at this news.
So this is where the Jerry chants came out, and certainly it's a dated reference, but this was a segment straight out of 1999, man. And you know what? I was tremendously entertained. Yes, it's incredibly trashy. It's super just like lowbrow, like name calling type of shit. I don't know. Maybe I'm lowbrow because I was tremendously entertained. You know, you have MVP here who continues to be excellent. I thought Lana was really great too. The both of them are just like these really very big, very provocative personalities, and the two of them clashing together was made for a really explosive and I think a really compelling scene. Some really good lines here. Divorce is a natural progression, you know, following a marriage, and certainly I thought it was really funny when the announcer said it would be Lana's second divorce in 8 months.
What a heartwarming statement from Wai Ting. Divorce is the natural progression from marriage.
For at least half the population, yeah.
So, yeah, who delivered the request for a divorce better, though? Bobby Lashley or Linda McMahon?
Oh, God.
No, Lana, I want a divorce.
Yeah, Linda's would certainly be all time. Yeah.
So that'll be a future segment. We go backstage, and Schreiber is with the Street Profits and Viking Raiders, and their rivalry has reached a stalemate. They had a common enemy in the Ninjas the night prior, and they said, Viking Profits assemble. And Wai, I've got to say that you and I really just totally whiffed on a scene that was designed for us this week of all weeks, when the four of them stood together and Ivar raised the turkey leg. Like, here is the Viking raising.
Like Mjolnir.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I recognize that. Yeah, well, he summoned it. It flew into his hand.
Wow. I really missed on that one on Sunday. But there you go.
You know what? It's one of those you have to watch many times to really grasp, I think.
And then in walks Akira Tozawa with his ninjas, including Big Jordan.
Yes.
The return. Wai, he's back.
He's back. This is like, you know, I thought this would be a one-time thing, but here he is.
No, Deacon Batista. The lessons have been learned. Let's put a guy with tremendous potential. Let's cover his face and dress him up as a ninja. That's
no. I mean, the difference is like Batista, you could see his face. I mean, this was essentially like, you know, like bring the local jobber out in a luchador mask.
It's going to be very hard to ever. Well, listen, people will forget about this guy. I really do hope that this is not this guy's unofficial call up, because like he's in the Braun Strowman category where he had a handful of matches and then he's on the main roster. I really hope that this is just a joke that ran one night too many, and it's not a sign of, hey, here's this 7+ foot dude in developmental. Let's put him on TV.
Yeah, I would certainly hope that if they have somebody with that amount of potential, that they wouldn't use him for a comedy angle dressed up in a ninja suit. So I'm hoping it's just for the sight gag and maybe a match or two, and that's it.
Now, during this, we had we'll get more with Tozawa. We'll get to that later. So we have the Street Profits and Viking Raiders against Tozawa and the Three Ninjas, and we've got Big Jordan on the floor. And they kill the ninjas, ending with Ivar and Ford hitting splashes off the top in 1:15. But then Jordan gets into the ring with Tozawa standing in front of him, and it is quite the size discrepancy, I will say. When the Big Show comes out, and man, did you see this guy walking up the steps?
Was it any different than before?
This guy looks like someone who has had hip surgery. Like, he was really like gingerly walking up these steps. It looked a little painful for him to be going up those steps. And
maybe there were no railings and he had to walk very slowly.
Well, man, Show just disposes of the ninjas and stares at Big Jordan. And that's how this ends.
I hated the segment last night. I thought it was really dreadful just having to sit through like somebody's really bad idea of what comedy is. But this match, I really didn't have any issues with at all. It was fun just seeing babyfaces beat up like these generic ninjas with their big moves. And I think, at this point, coming off of like that segment, I recognize this for what it is, and I can start to enjoy it for what it is. And that's just like slapstick campy fun. It's superheroes versus ninjas, and it's relatively harmless.
So, yeah, we'll see where this goes with the ninjas, but it seems to be something they're going with here. In the back, Charlie is with Seth Rollins, and no one has seen Dominic. He came to the PC against Ray's wishes, and Seth is hoping that Dominic is going to show up because he has a message to convey to Ray. Christian is on the phone, and he's talking to somebody, understands the risks, and doesn't know what he will do. I thought the person on the other line was asking about COVID testing, but it could have been anything.
Oh, man.
No. He cannot let Randy get away with this.
Yeah.
Then we had Seth come out. And I think to properly put this into context, Way, did you see the text exchange between Ray and Dominic that got leaked onto Ray's Twitter account?
I saw you post it. I did not actually see it.
Oh, I was hoping you and I could do a dramatic reading of these tweets if you would like to play Dominic.
I will. Let me just give me a second. I'll bring it up. I actually have them right here. Okay,
so if anyone missed these are on Rey Mysterio's on his Twitter account. Screen grabs of his text messaging conversation with son Dominic and learning of his son's whereabouts.
First of all, I mean, is Rey Mysterio blind? Like, look at this font size.
He's a big font reader. That's okay.
Wow. Okay. Really big though. Like, how do you even type? Like this thing takes up the whole screen. But anyway, let's go.
Son, where you at?
Don't worry. I just had to step out for a minute. All good.
Okay. But where?
I'm taking care of something. And then
I send the GIF?
Rollins GIF. Rollins GIF. I posted a Rollins GIF.
Come on, Dom. Stop messing around. Moms is worried, and I'm bugging out right now. Stop fucking with me. Question mark.
Airplane emoji. FLPC. I'm okay, Pops. Tell Mom not to worry. I'm taking care of our problem.
Oh no, I see the next one here. No, mi chingues, mijo, te pedi que no te fuenes.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, no, there's more. Regresate. I'm butchering this so badly. Please listen to me. Come back home.
Brandon, I know you're already screen capturing it all. I'll be expecting it 7 a.m. in the morning.
Prayer emoji.
Sorry, Pops. It's too late. I'm already gone. Trust me on this.
No response.
Damn.
I was hoping we'd get like the text bubble at the bottom, like Ray he's about to type, but he can't even think now. But he started the text, so you're just seeing the bubbles.
Well, listen, I appreciate the effort to kind of like fully immerse the audience into the storyline. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
So there you go. That was the text exchange. Do you text with your father at all?
Oh God, no. He's like he doesn't. He like butt dials me all the time. That's about as much as he would do to initiate. But he doesn't know how to text. Your dad?
My dad does not text at all. No, can't say that. If I disappeared, that he would be alternating between languages, asking me where I am. So Seth comes out. He says Ray is a hero. He sacrificed himself for the greater good and the future of Raw. But Ray has declined his invitation, but Dominic accepted. Ray appears on the screen. He did not know Dominic was coming to Raw until it was too late. And Seth wants Ray to encourage Dominic to join him. Ray calls him crazy. And Murphy and Theory are busy looking for Dominic. And he says that if Dominic is not part of the solution, then he's part of the problem, Ray. And Ray promises to end Seth if you touch my son. Seth gets down on his knees, and Dominic shows up from behind and attacks him. And he takes Seth to the floor, throws him into the steps as Murphy and Theory run out. And then Dominic plays Orange Cassidy, just evading these three. They're like the Three Stooges trying to catch him, and he just escapes through the crowd from them.
You know, the story of like Rollins trying to recruit Ray's son, I think is a pretty interesting one. It's, you know, it's very Star Wars like Seth is the Empire and like Ray is like the rebellion, and they're fighting over like Luke, basically. Luke Mysterio. And I think it's actually a story that fits pretty well with what Rollins is doing right now, and I think stands to perhaps like, you know, actually be an interesting, compelling storyline for this type of character. I thought Dominic went through all that physicality pretty well, and overall I actually enjoyed the segment. I thought it was one of Seth's best since the character's debut.
Yeah, and they announced Ray will be back next week. So obviously, him and Dominic probably did share a plane coming here for at the time, back-to-back tapings. Now it looks like Ray will probably be there a day extra.
Sure, a plane. What do you mean? Ray didn't know where he was, you know? Dominic got on the plane emoji FLPC by himself.
So after that, we had MVP and Lashley in the back. R-Truth walks in, and Truth gives him his sincere condominiums over his loss. Went to Claymore country, and now you're getting a divorce, and he's chased off. This was an odd segment.
I thought Truth was actually really funny here, and I mean, I found his integration into like sort of like the main event scene certainly unusual, right? Because you have Lashley and Drew who are in the title picture, and then you have R-Truth just suddenly, without any real reason, associating himself with the rest. But I thought it added a great deal of, I think, like just comic relief for an otherwise, you know, like good storyline, but like one that I think, you know, I think Truth's addition like made it a bit more colorful, and it makes serious characters like an MVP and Lashley reacting to his idiocy pretty funny to me.
They announced for SmackDown on Friday the return of Bray Wyatt on the Firefly Funhouse, and Mandy Rose will be on Miz TV. This along with the AJ title celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Lashley and MVP find R-Truth. He is underneath a ring in the storage area. Drew McIntyre appears, and this is where they end up having MVP suggest that both of them put their titles on the line in a winner-take-all match. Truth agrees, and Drew just shoots him a look as they have agreed to put their belts on the line for nothing.
Is that how contracts are signed? Somebody just has to say yes?
Well, according to you and the Christian precedent, verbal is enough.
Okay, yeah. Well, he actually said Yahtzee.
That's true, followed by bingo.
I mean, I guess in any language, yes is yes.
Liv Morgan and Natalya versus the Iconics. Natalya got tossed to the floor after making the tag to Morgan, and then Liv went for a roll-up, but the referee was busy dealing with Peyton Royce, so there was a blind tag, and they hit the fall from grace, pinning Liv in 2.5 minutes, and this would set up a confrontation between Natalya and Liv Morgan for later. But first, we get the Iconics challenging Bayley and Banks to come fight them, but they don't come out. So instead, they make the challenge for next week on Raw to face the champions.
Yeah, the not coming out part I thought was really odd, because they would just come out later on. And rather than say, you know, we'll await your answer later today, it was just they went off air basically, you know, confident that they were going to get the match next week. But okay,
I mean,
whatever.
they may have maybe like they probably weren't like just standing there ready to come out. Like they really gave them no time. I mean, if you were like in a trailer somewhere, and I mean, you may not even have the show on. I mean,
no, I understand. Yeah. I guess it was just unusual that they would stage that. You know,
maybe they should have just said like we were Sasha was in the shower. They had to do their makeup. They had to get ready. And then they came out like 45 minutes later when they were ready.
Sure.
Christian is backstage and he gets a pep talk from Uncle Paul, this being Paul White, who warns him about an unsanctioned match being dangerous. Orton can do anything he wants. And this is so serious that he's no longer Christian. He is Jay in this segment. And you have two options. But I'll tell you, if it was me, I'd erase that smile off his face. And that left some great insight for Jay to defy doctor's orders, because Big Show's basically saying, hey, are you a coward or not?
Are you a man or are you not?
It's kind of the whole setup here from Big Show. He was like what I would hope, Way, that if I had to stop doing something because of physical damage that I have incurred, that you would not say, well, are you a man or are you not? Be like, thanks, dude. You really are the voice of reason that I need in this moment of conflict right now internally. Thank you. Thank you for sending me out to the wolves. So Big Show, bad friend.
Well, all that said, I actually enjoyed the use of Big Show here. I don't know if he was specifically called in here to do this or to take part in the ninja thing. I'm thinking more so the ninja thing, because he was a lot more involved in that. But the fact that they managed to double his value by using him as well for this Christian thing, as sort of like, I guess he's a babyface friend of Christian, but I mean, he might as well be a heel friend to whoever as well. Because was he last a heel? Like when he fought Drew? What was that? Was he heel or babyface then?
He was a heel that
Okay.
night. The WrestleMania deal.
Well, tonight he's a babyface. But this felt like a good, genuine pep talk from a longtime friend, and I thought they managed to use Show as well as Ric Flair really well on this show.
Natalya is with Liv Morgan and said she made rookie mistakes. She's got zero discipline and lacks vision. All this needed was you bloody millennial. Like, that's pretty much what the speech was from Natalya, and said it's no wonder that Ruby Riott let you go. And
is Liv a millennial or is she Gen Z?
I guess she would maybe qualify as the latter potentially.
What is Gen Z?
When was Liv Morgan born? Like, she had to have been born in the 90s, right?
Let me just see. Yeah, Gen Z, mid to late 90s.
June of 94.
Okay, so mid to late 90s.
She might be just outside of that. She might be millennial territory.
All right.
She was born just days before the OJ chase.
Wow.
Anyway, there's your trivia. So she.
Do you think that's what she tells everybody? I was born.
Yeah, I was born days before the Bronco chase. So Natalya is then left on her own, and she's just ranting to herself. And Lana just is there. She just comes out of thin air and says, I just got humiliated in front of the entire world. 1.8 million tops. And is tired of being blamed for everyone's shortcomings. Natalya says, I know how you feel. I know how you feel.
Lana says that. Oh, wait, you're right. Natalya says
Natalya
that.
said
I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah.
They're both on the same page and sick of people.
So it looks like they're teasing some sort of partnership. Are we talking tag team or managerial role?
Sure, either or.
Well, we know these two are very good friends from their association on Total Divas. Well, we shall see what they come up with.
Christian comes out and Charlie is there. He was called a coward. He's proud of his career. He's got nothing to prove, but he won't be disrespected. And he accepts the match with Randy Orton. It's now official. There's no turning back. Apollo Crews is propositioned by MVP, saying there's a difference between being a fighting champion and a smart one. Says you can get burnt out quickly, and how a former champion can a champion can become a former champion. You need to navigate the decisions to face the right opponent at the right time for the right amount of money. And MVP is saying he can help Crews navigate his championship defenses. And Crews says, if I'm not a fighting champion, I'm not a champion at all. He turns him down, and MVP tells him, you're only going to keep this title with me in your corner.
You know, throughout this entire show, they managed to like have a lot of repeated appearances from, you know, people like Christian and people like MVP, who like MVP in this case, like really was popping up all over the show, almost like setting up different storylines at the same time. And here it seems like he was certainly building up Apollo Crews either to be Lashley's next opponent or perhaps even his own.
Yeah, I think it really seems that they are going to be expanding MVP's group. That's kind of the feeling you got tonight. Like they're putting a lot behind MVP.
Yeah, and he deserves it. He's been excellent in every segment.
Agreed. Ric Flair was with Charlotte for what had to have been the most pointless segment of the night. He asks her, "What is your plan? What do you want to do next?" And Charlotte was like, "Huh? What next title am I going to go for? No, like who gets under your skin? Lots of people. Woo, that's my answer." I knew we were going to get more of Ric Flair because like there's no way this was what they advertised Flair for tonight's show. There was no way this could have been it. This was, I don't know what this was.
I guess it was a way to get Charlotte's like presence on the show.
What a presence. Huge.
and another way to, you know, like get the most out of Ric Flair.
Could have been like, so with this news about Paul, is this going to impact you at all, Charlotte? Well, I don't know. We're going to find out. I'm not scheduled for anything tonight, so I'm waiting and seeing. We're going to see how this Bruce guy treats me.
Paul? What are you talking about? Oh, got it.
There
are a few Pauls.
Yeah, that's true. There are quite a lot of Pauls when you think about it. Apollo Crews, not Paul, Apollo, versus Shelton Benjamin for the U.S. title. Apollo's got new music.
He does, yeah. He's got. So they take.
That's a good sign.
You know they take a wrestler seriously when they add words at the beginning of their song. You know, it's like "burn it down" or like "woo" or like what's another one, John? "If you smell what the Rock is cooking," you know. And we have our next in line, Apollo. Well,
it was.
And then it gets into the music. Yeah.
Did you like the song?
I mean, I've only heard it like briefly. Don't really have an opinion on it either way. I think it's an improvement over what he had, which was just pretty generic.
It's got lyrics. It's better than the old one. The old one wasn't anything memorable. So Benjamin has a inset promo saying he was once the young, hungry champion, and Apollo should take MVP's advice. Benjamin hits him with a splash and a German suplex as MVP is watching backstage, and then Crews comes back, enziguri, standing moonsault, and then rolls up Shelton and hooks the bottom rope, grabs the bottom rope for leverage and pins Shelton at 208. There was no one more happy than Samoa Joe that Apollo Crews cheated to win.
I think he's been like Joe has been doing a good job maintaining himself as sort of like a heel at heart, even though last time he was here, he was a baby face. And on commentary, he largely plays a baby face, but he's still got that edge to it. And I don't know if you've seen this, but like it's been making the rounds where last night he was like talking about AJ and saying how, I'm hoping AJ can spend a bit more time with his family. And then he just gives this death stare to the camera. Like, just to remind us that this guy has quite the history with AJ's family.
Well, they brought you up to speed to remind you.
The idea, I guess, with this match is to show that Apollo isn't just like a goody two shoes who only follows the rules. He is, a baby face, but he's somebody who's smart enough to be able to take advantage of the rules when he needs to. He, unlike what MVP suggests, Apollo believes he is a smart champion. So I enjoyed this. It was something different from your kind of usual babyface win for Crews, adding a little bit more depth to the character.
Charlie was with Asuka, and she just cut a promo. Nia started this fight. She's going to finish it for the rematch later tonight. Drew is with R-Truth. Truth went and spoke to the powers that be, and now only Drew's title is on the line. So if R-Truth loses, Drew loses his title. But Truth has nothing at risk here. It's all on Drew to make sure he can keep his title.
Yeah, I wonder how that negotiation went.
Yeah, this was didn't go well for R-Truth. It went great. Yeah. Yes, no problem here. It's Drew that got kind of outsmarted. The Street Profits and Viking Raiders are going over suggestions of what they can do next to top one another. They suggest chess, Uno, a chariot race, which piqued my interest. Big Show enters, and he suggests Ivar brings up carpool karaoke, and he says, no, never again with the carpool karaoke. Big Show says they should have a title match next week, and they all agree, and they start dancing.
It's the weirdest stipulation of all. A wrestling match. Oh, my God.
Did you notice that tonight, I mean, one thing that, we'll get the occasional title match on TV when it's something, nothing like tonight, though. They did 3 title matches tonight, and it's very rare. That seemed to be one difference this week. And next week, we've got 2 title matches on Raw. So I wonder if that's like a small thing that they're just deciding to make some of these matches feel more important, is put the titles on the line more frequently.
Sure, yeah. Honestly, I didn't even really notice all that much, because I don't know how important title matches are these days, especially when it's R-Truth and Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley and MVP. It wasn't necessarily like there was that hint at all that any title change was going to occur, nor was there any prestige really attached to it. But I guess, yeah, why not? I mean, really, your TV should be your priority. You're getting way more money from a TV show than you might for a pay-per-view. Also
tonight, like nothing in terms of, hinting at Extreme Rules. It just seemed to be more so.
How far are we?
Yeah, we have a month. It's not, essential.
19th.
Yeah, July 19th. So, I mean, they've got time. Right. Just not really a big focus of, any certain directions that they're going. But I guess you're getting some hints. So, Drew and R-Truth versus Lashley and MVP. Truth is like annoying Drew at the beginning, where Drew is just looking all frustrated in the corner and is just, I kind of like, it just felt like a little weird for Drew that he's like, this has been the guy that has always been one step ahead of the heels throughout this whole thing. And now he's like been outsmarted by R-Truth. But this all kind of worked in the end.
I mean, certainly it was odd, I think, to start without, like knowing the full picture, because Drew up until this point has been proven to be pretty infallible in terms of just his confidence. He's not really concerned about everything. The guy goes up against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and not for a second does he appear scared or something. But in this scenario, when he's put in a situation where R-Truth might lose his belt for him, he like stresses the fuck out. And it all makes sense by the end, but it was definitely like unusual.
Yeah, after Truth is getting beaten down, the tag is made to Drew. He hits the Future Shock DDT on Lashley and then attacks MVP on the floor. Lashley ends up making the save, and then Truth takes Lashley out to the floor and does a drop toe hold, sending him into the steps and setting up Drew to hit the Claymore to MVP. But instead of him going for the pin, he tags his partner, and R-Truth splashes him off the top, and it's R-Truth that pins MVP in 9 minutes, 11 seconds. R-Truth is not the new WWE champion. Drew retains.
Yes, that's right. I thought it was really interesting how they like decided to do all this, and really, I think by the end of here, they managed to use R-Truth in a way to make Drew McIntyre a little bit more interesting. It seems like they're going with some sort of like, odd couple dynamic between R-Truth and then you have Drew McIntyre, who's like more of the serious guy. And rather than having Drew going from being completely concerned and totally like, not taking this dude seriously, he goes from that to earning his trust and earning so much trust that he's even willing to let him do the pinfall at the end here. I mean, Phillips did describe it as Drew having so much confidence in the Claymore that he's in like no rush to go for the cover. So like he did explain it that way. But at the same time, I mean, it seems to me like they are going to do something more with Drew and Truth here. Otherwise, I wouldn't think that they would let Truth get the cover just like that. But overall, I thought it was like a different set of emotions that they put Drew McIntyre through, and again, like adds a bit of depth to whatever he is.
Do you remember that this was the format of the match that David Arquette won the WCW title? He was teaming with DDP, who was the WCW champion, against Eric Bischoff and Jeff Jarrett. And DDP helped Arquette win, Arquette won DDP's title by pinning Eric Bischoff.
So DDP was a champion at that time? I totally don't remember all that. Well, why did he do that? Did he like screw himself, or did he knowingly screw himself, or not?
Well, I can't remember the exact ending sequence of the match, but it was like DDP celebrating with Arquette at the end. That, hey, look, you've won my title. Now, in
I
fairness,
didn't see it coming, man.
This did end DDP's historical third title reign that lasted 24 hours. So he didn't have that much of an emotional attachment to this title. But it was the last time DDP ever won the WCW title, was when David Arquette ended his one-day title reign.
Oh, man. So much
WCW 2000.
So much goodness.
Ric Flair meets with Christian in the back, and he tells Christian, "You're not ready for this. Orton's at the top of his game. He's untouchable." And Christian says, "I can't forgive him for what he said." And this doesn't read as well as it played out. I thought this was a great segment between these two. It just felt like a real conversation of somebody warning the other. I thought this was great.
Absolutely. I felt the same thing about their little interaction on the kickoff yesterday. I thought Flair sounded like surprisingly good, when I feel like previous, scenes we've seen of him on TV have all been either really scripted or just like, reducing him to just catchphrases. Here, he actually like gets to act and gets to play Ric Flair, or at least a version of Ric Flair. And he felt really genuine here.
I agree. Yeah, very good segment. Bayley and Sasha came out, and it's Bayley's birthday. She's 31 today. And she said it's going to be her celebration week. She spoke about her hair and what she did with her hair.
She shaved a birthday cake into the back or something.
She is looking more and more like Rachel Maddow by the week.
I don't even know who that is. Who is that?
Cable news host.
I'm gonna
MSNBC.
Google her right now. I guess.
Not quite.
She's got brown hair, short brown hair.
Well, they said they're going to whoop Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox on NXT, and they cut to the crowd. I seriously thought they were going to cut to Shotzi Blackheart in the crowd.
I guess she wasn't there, eh?
I didn't see her. I didn't see her tonight. And then they're going to finish the week on SmackDown. Banks tells the Iconics to never tell them when they defend their titles. So this prompts the Iconics to come out. And they bring up beating them for the titles at WrestleMania last year. And then you two had your meltdowns and couldn't handle the pressure then or now. And Peyton slapped Sasha. Bayley has a tantrum on her birthday and accepts the match. And Banks is upset at this. So next week, we're going to get 2 tag title matches with the Street Profits, Viking Raiders, and Iconics challenging Banks and Bayley.
Yes, that's right. So they're already being a lot more active with these tag title belts. And really, like, to me, I'm looking forward to that NXT match probably more than anything else that's going on. But this was, I think, a good little 1 week build here for the Iconics and Sasha Bayley next week. Trash talk, connecting it to the Mania win last year. It worked.
And they announced Rey Mysterio returns next week as well. So that's what we've got on tap. Asuka, Nia Jax for the Raw Women's title. Jax is overpowering her at the beginning until Asuka uses a flying armbar. And much like the match on Sunday, it was Asuka going for a lot of submissions and Jax either breaking out of them or getting to the rope and escaping them. She eventually catches Asuka and drops her on the floor with a powerbomb. And we go to a commercial break.
I couldn't believe this, honestly.
This is like a tribute to like one of Vader's crazy power bombs. This was a pretty enormous one.
I mean, I think that spot would have been dangerous either way, but fine, whatever. But like after the track record, that I'm sorry. I know a lot of people don't really hold like Nia accountable for whatever happened to Kyrie, but still, there are plenty of other incidents where I don't know. I would certainly be concerned, and I would certainly ask like whose idea it was to like this powerbomb did not look safe at all, or at least did not look easy to take. And anyway, all for a commercial break. Of course, Asuka was fine afterwards.
Asuka stopped the Samoan drop, hit her with a stomp, and then Jax caught her with the Samoan drop, but Asuka's foot is under the rope, prompting Nia to then shove referee John Cohen, who goes to call for the bell, but then Asuka rolls her up, so Cohen hesitates, fast counts Nia at 8:53, and Asuka retains.
Well, I think the expectation is that this feud probably continues. If this was the out of the program, I think it would be incredibly lame. So if it builds to another match, I guess it's totally fine. I think Asuka again shows that she does really well working against a giant. And I think makes up for a lot of, like other limitations that Nia has.
And after that, Charlie interviewed Randy Orton. He asks, do you think Christian's a legend? She does. And Randy agrees. He says there are no rules or regulations in an unsanctioned match, and in a few minutes, the legend of Christian will be destroyed. So Christian comes out for his big comeback with 7 minutes remaining in the show. And there they are in the ring when Ric Flair comes out and he tries to talk Christian out of this. He said, I just spoke to Edge. This isn't cool. Christian says, I have to do this. And the bell rings, and there's Flair. As he's exiting the ring, he gets down, he low blows Christian, and Christian is down on his knees as Orton punts Christian and pins him in a minute.
This was not even about the match, really. It was about honestly, it was the angle. And like when Christian was, I think, like when they did the Matt Hardy attack, when they did the Beth Phoenix attack, I think a lot of us expected, Christian's probably next. He's probably going to get beat up. They never did that throughout the entire build to WrestleMania. They never did it even through the build to this greatest match ever. Instead, they did it after the greatest match ever, which I found really interesting, but I was really pleased with the way they managed to drag out the entire show to lead up to this one punt. And yeah, we didn't get the match. Was it a bit of bait and switch? Sure, perhaps. But I wasn't honestly even expecting the match, nor was I, to be honest with you, looking that forward to whatever unsanctioned like shenanigans were going to take place anyway. And I was so happy with, I think, the way this played out and Flair's involvement, which I thought was awesome. It came out of, no pun intended, out of nowhere. And it led wonderfully to more of Randy Orton doing his like very maniacal stalking leading up to the return, like using that punt again, which seems to be, at least for now, like some sort of regular move in his repertoire.
They brought back the punt and
with a knee slap.
Yeah, which is just amazing. But yeah, I think that this would certainly, like, I don't know what exactly the plans are with Christian, but if, like, you need to be, it's not like you have like, okay, you're half cleared. It's like you're either cleared or you're not cleared. They would not be doing this spot if he wasn't. So that tells me that, to do this angle, they're not doing angles like this with people that aren't cleared.
Well, it does make me wonder how they're shooting this punt that has changed their mind, because, these are all taped shows. Yep. Like when he did it last night, of course that match was taped, and in this match it was taped too. Like it looked really good. You get to see at least what seems like some form of contact when you're playing it, but there are cuts in there. So I don't know if there's a sleight of hand attached to it that allows them to safely do it without the same level of risk this time around. And if that's the case, maybe you don't have to have Christian like actually be cleared in order to just essentially take this kick.
Yeah, we'll see what this leads to or doesn't lead to. I kind of took this to be like the punt. That should be the last we see of Christian.
Yeah. And so where does Orton go from here? Like who would avenge, either of these guys now that they're both gone?
Rhino.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't have too many friends, the two of them, I guess.
Kurt's gone.
Yeah. The Hardys are, Jeff's got his own issues. Matt's gone. Bubba?
I don't know about that either.
Devon?
I don't know about that either.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you see Flair kind of being a mouthpiece for Randy? Do you, like, obviously that was the big angle here was, Rick Was it just a convenient out to set up the angle and Rick was able to be used, or do you see a deeper role with Rick attached to Randy?
Certainly, like for the short term, yeah. I mean, that seems to be what this was leading to. I would be disappointed if Flair, getting the most physical he's gotten in years, didn't do some sort of follow-up with Randy in sort of like a mini, Evolution reunion. I think that would be great, but at the same time, you have to question how... Ric Flair at his age, how often is he going to be traveling? I mean, this is, again, in the middle of a pandemic, and how willing are they going to be to just have Flair be around on a regular basis? I'm not sure. And certainly, with increased concerns coming off of this taping, that's something to think about.
After the punt, Randy was awesome. He's upset at Christian for forcing him to kick him in the head. I didn't want to do this. They've got the stretcher out for him. We go way back. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want this to be the last chapter of your career, but it's your fault, and you have to forgive me. I can't let you destroy my livelihood. If it comes down to me or you, it's always going to be me that I pick. But you must forgive me. I thought Randy was great here at the end, just getting in his face and angry at him for forcing me to drill you in the head.
He was so good, really, really good. And this is sort of one of the magic tricks of a current, present day Randy Orton that I don't know if you can really teach, he just has it. He has the ability to do stuff like this, and it's fantastic. It did feel like it was dragging a little bit though towards the end of the show, didn't it? It felt like you saw the logo, the copyright come up, and then it just kept going on and on. Then eventually it's just like, why aren't you guys taking him away? Anyway, but it was great.
I liked tonight's episode of Raw. I thought that they moved a lot of things forward. I thought that they, I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff on the show. I think you had a hook throughout with the Christian stuff. Randy is doing tremendous stuff, and realistically, he has been all year. With this Edge return, It's been the best work of years for Randy. And it's coming off a really well-received match on Sunday as well. But you're seeing a lot of movement in, all the key characters that you're moving. I like tonight's show.
I did too, and certainly coming off of this, some people are going to be wow, the first show of the Pritchard era, it was great. I have no idea how much, was left over, I suppose, from the Paul Heyman stories or whatever. But any concern that, anybody might have had about at least the first week, to me, this episode completely washed that away, because this was a good show. Fast moving, a lot of new developments. I love the so long angle with Christian. I love the integration of both Big Show and Ric Flair into it. Orton was amazing. And I would say a lot of other people had really, good, useful segments on this show.
Yeah. Let's go to the feedback, and I'm curious to see everyone's thoughts on tonight's show. It gets a 5.71, so not overwhelming, but a pass nonetheless on our forum. Paul from New Jersey, this show was terrific. The booking of the women's tag division is night and day compared to months ago. Multiple segments tonight with matches set up for NXT, as well as next week's Raw. Bayley was hilarious. Apollo has a new theme. He's been booked incredibly strong and got a win being portrayed as the smart babyface. Vega has her troops back in line, and MVP is clearly recruiting. Although a bit hokey, I like the R-Truth Drew McIntyre stuff because it told a story, and goes on to give this an 8 out of 10. I like the Big Show calling Christian by his real name, Jay. It added to the segment.
We got a Tyler from Orlando who says, this was the first Raw I watched live in maybe 3 months. I actually maybe only watch one Raw on the DVR once a month. Perhaps when the crowds come back, I will come back full time as well. Tonight I watched because of the rumors on Twitter about my second favorite wrestler of all time possibly making an in-ring return. Although it wasn't really a match, Christian being a major part of the show again made me very satisfied. I hope it continues as long as they deemed it safe for him to be there. By the way, did you guys hear that? Oh, okay. Well, Tyler brings up, are you reading this, John?
Yeah, I mean, I did not have enough time to really look into this, that there was, some fan that has had past incidents at the Performance Center showing up that security had to take care of. I saw it was reported by Fightful, and apparently, yeah, there was some kind of streaming component to this as well. But with all the different stories that were coming out, I just haven't had a chance to really look into this beyond that.
I wasn't aware.
Andrew from Cape Breton, I hated this show. I found it to be one of the worst Raws in recent memory. I'll go for the positive first. The Orton angle at the end was great. Getting there was a bit rough, though, as the logic of unsanctioned matches was killed off a bit by them having a referee, a bell, and Christian being allowed to wrestle in the first place. If that's the case, what kept Edge from having unsanctioned matches after almost being killed by Seth Rollins? However, the angle at the end was great. I would love to see Ric Flair stay around as some sort of Freddie Blassie-style manager, but with the recent news that broke, maybe he shouldn't be anywhere near the PC. The main reason I hated this show was because of how goofy some of the angles were, particularly the tag title match and the Viking Profits. Last night's atrocity continued, and poor Tozawa went from a guy who could only win on NXT to being part of the Young Dragons segments. I don't really want to see the Viking Raiders or the Street Profits wrestle on TV at all because of how obnoxious both teams are. I hated the goofiness attached to McIntyre and Lashley, as it seemed like a world title feud, and shot it down to the mid-card. 2 out of 10.
There was certainly goofiness on the show, but there's, to me, always been goofiness on Raw, and the only question is whether or not it's good goofiness or bad goofiness. And I think there's been good goofiness throughout Raw's history, and it's certainly debatable what you thought was good about the Viking Profits stuff. Arguably, none of that was good, but to me, it's relegated to the mid card, and it's, something like what we saw tonight to me was inoffensive enough that I could just excuse it for some mid card comedy. The Lana Lashley stuff is certainly of a level that might rub people the wrong way. But to me, like, I've seen a lot of good WWE trash, or at least trash that I've been very entertained by. And at least according to this one segment, I found it entertaining. But I could see Andrew completely hating this one as well. We got Andrew from Portland who says, or Alexander from Portland who says, the Viking Profits replay from Backlash swept the trash tentacle monster under the rug. So what was the point of it being included? Nothing. Just a sight gag. Randy returning to the Legend Killer gimmick sounds amazing, but beyond Edge and maybe Christian, there aren't many legends that he can take on. Between last night and tonight, there's no better challenger for Drew than Randy Orton. He feels like the perfect guy to take the title off of Drew McIntyre. Well, that's a question for you, John. Like, if this Legend Killer gimmick seems to like be getting this revival, that they're portraying, like, where can they take it?
I think that ultimately Randy needs baby faces to work with, and there's, who are the legends? Oh, the legends. To be honest, like, that doesn't really excite me. The idea of just bringing people back to work with Randy. I would rather just see him kind of integrated with, like, the talent that's there. Like, who even comes to mind? That you haven't exhausted?
Ray, he's already done recently.
Yeah, like, I really don't want to see Randy in the Big Show and, stuff like that.
Oh God, no.
And like, who is available as well that that you could bring it. Like, I think ultimately Drew and Orton is probably the direction I would imagine for SummerSlam. Just off the top of my head, that would seem to be a likely scenario for Orton to go to.
So then maybe this Legend Killer thing is just like a one month only type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on if you had the right person. That would make sense that you could do. But, to me, just finding other guys just for the sake of it, I don't know if that's really advancing Randy much.
Alex also has some feedback for New Japan, which we will discuss a little bit later on with WH Park, but maybe let me just read it right now. He says, as for New Japan, it was entirely skippable from an in-ring perspective, but their presentation seemed top-notch. Showing the announcers social distancing, the guardrails being sanitized, no audience, shows that New Japan is taking COVID more seriously than a fair amount of U.S. politicians. The lack of audience wasn't as big of a factor either. And he says, the women's tag belts have seen a large number of defenses lately. Why do you think that is? Since the belts can be defended across 3 brands, do you know who is in charge of booking them?
I mean, the shows it's Bruce Pritchard, Vince McMahon. Like, those are your main showrunners. It seems like, I don't think it's a case of just the women's tag titles. I think we're starting to see they're utilizing a lot of title defenses now on TV, at least in the immediate future. So I think that's Bayley, always been, yeah.
Well, I think Bayley and Sasha having the belts is a little bit more high profile than like Alexa and Nikki Cross, for instance. And I mean, there is sort of like that romantic thing of like them, completing what they initially set out to do with taking the belts to NXT. Like on NXT, I really certainly don't imagine like a title change to take place anytime soon. I feel like it's just more of a way to, add their name value to NXT and just essentially to have hot matches. So I don't know how much booking NXT's people need to be involved with.
Okay, next up here, we are going to Aaron from Brampton. I really want to see how they executed a potential Christian return. They definitely had me hooked for that. I genuinely thought they'd have someone wrestle in Christian's place, but I'm glad that was not the case. Having Randy beat down a retired wrestler just makes him more despicable. It feels like they're heating Orton up, and it wouldn't shock me if his SummerSlam program was against Drew McIntyre. How would you guys feel about that being the main event program? Everything between the opening segment and the main event was just a blur. I'm not sure if that meant I was able to concentrate on my work with the TV on or that Raw was bad enough to not distract me. We kind of talked about that. I think that's a logical way to go. With Drew holding the title and Randy Orton being the most over heel in the company at the moment.
Yep. Works for me. We go to Walter from Texas, who says, am I alone in thinking that the end of Raw would have been an ideal time for Tommaso Ciampa to show up and get things going with Randy Orton and pay off their Twitter feud?
That's actually a great direction to go in the immediate future, because he does have the connection with Edge, and you've kind of started this thing with Orton. It's not that wouldn't be the worst idea. I don't know if that's really where they are.
How many people are aware of that connection?
Of Ciampa and Edge? I think that's something you could explain. That's part of like introducing Ciampa and explaining that kind of mentorship.
They could. I guess I just, I don't know if that's ever something that they really intended on ever doing, or if it was just them kind of having fun with each other on Twitter. And
I don't think it's where they're going, but I'm just saying, if you were looking for a bridge, you could come up with a lot worse options than Ciampa.
How do you actually intend that feud to go, though? Once the two of them are actually in the ring, and if it's just a bridge, Ciampa is going to have to lose, right?
Oh yeah, that's where I would see it going. It would be like Orton slapping his thigh and kicking him in the head.
Anyway, he says blah blah blah. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Last one is Brian from New York. I know it wasn't much of a news-making show, but I was just thankful to have New Japan back in our lives again this morning. Props to their adjustments, from Yano replacing his water spitting with sanitizer spray, Liger being brought to us by flat screen TV, and giving us an exciting halftime show full of cleaning. Only part that made me sad was seeing Minoru Suzuki walking around the ring during his entrance and looking upset when he couldn't find any bystanders to punch. I'm looking forward to the Cup tournament starting Tuesday, as the stakes of it should counter some of the silent environment that's been hindering other wrestling shows. Only question coming off Raw tonight, and Ric Flair's sudden injection into the show. Looking ahead to big match possibilities at SummerSlam, what's the better chance of happening? Charlotte adopting Randy Orton's legend killer gimmick and going after Beth Phoenix, or Randy Orton deciding the biggest legend currently around that he could kill is Charlotte, and WWE finally goes ahead with an intergender match?
I don't see either of those happening, but certainly not the latter.
No, I don't imagine Randy Orton and Charlotte at WrestleMania, or at SummerSlam, I should say. What do you see with Charlotte in the near future?
So she is technically a Raw talent, right?
Maybe program her as Charlotte kind of straddles the line of babyface heel that she can work with anyone. Maybe that's a program for Shayna Baszler with Charlotte. It's something new.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Shayna's just disappeared for the last month, so
yes.
She's got nothing going on.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now, that almost seems too big, for just Extreme Rules. Is that one you say for SummerSlam? Or at this point, does it matter where they go?
You could hold it off till SummerSlam. Another one that's gone missing is Bianca Belair, since that call-up, where she doesn't even accompany the Street Profits anymore.
That's true. Yeah, I believe I saw her on a main event. Yeah. But she's not aligned with the Street Profits. At least not on Raw. They can continue that on, but this time on Raw, but they just did it pretty recently.
All right. That's all of the feedback. So at this point, we're going to welcome in WH Park to chat all things New Japan. All right, we're going to change gears now and welcome in WH Park, as we are going to talk a little bit about Monday's return for New Japan Pro Wrestling after a 110-day hiatus. WH, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm okay. Watched some New Japan last night, so feel good about wrestling again to some degree. But it was a good show.
Yeah, they did kind of the New Year's Dash presentation today where it was a surprise card, and really this was all about New Japan just putting on a card for everybody. Not one of high consequences, but more or less, hey, we're back, and here is a 3-hour show to just pretty much serve as the prelude for the New Japan Cup.
Yeah, and I think, based on like my Twitter timeline, like so many people were so happy just to see anything from this company, whether it's an empty arena, whether it has fans or not, and you just be able to see like your favorite wrestlers from a company that's so beloved to so many people was just such a feel good moment for a lot of people, I think.
I was watching and certainly most interested in seeing what a New Japan version of an empty arena show would look like, what their safety precautions would be on camera. How do you feel they did, WH?
I suppose as well as anyone, like you saw the break time in the middle of the show where you saw like people wearing like protective gear, just wiping down, disinfecting the mat and around the ring as well. So I thought that's a nice touch. It's not as jarring as seeing some of the Noah shows where you see all the camera people wearing protective gear and all the wrestlers wearing just their gear. So on that front, like it's good to see, this kind of presentation of like we're doing as best as we can to keep this environment safe for the staff and the wrestlers.
So something that like really stood out to me was like seeing the announcers, and when you first tune in, it's a shot of Milano and the play-by-play announcer. I forget his name, but then like right in between them is Jushin Thunder Liger on a TV screen, and Chris Charlton tweeted out that the reason why Jushin Liger was on a TV screen, even though he was actually sitting there next to them all, was so that they could fit all three people into frame while keeping social distancing. And that to me was amazing, because on every professional wrestling show that's currently going on in North America, every UFC event, at the very least, even if they are socially distancing, they are coming together for that one on camera at the front. And for New Japan to not even want to give into that, and to instead bring a camera and a TV set to house Jushin Liger simply to like fit them into a shot. To me, I thought that said a lot about how seriously they were taking this.
Well, I mean, if you watch other Japanese wrestling shows with commentary, there's, like the announcers will sit apart from each other. Usually there's only two. And like for Noah shows, especially, I've seen like them keeping like about 6 feet apart from each other, the two commentators. And the thing about that is like, in Japan, people take rules very seriously, as you both well know. So like for New Japan to go that extra distance of like, to put Jushin Liger on a TV screen so you can observe social distancing rules is actually very, in keeping with like, Japanese culture.
Some of the highlights of the show we had in the main event, Tetsuya Naito, Shingo Takagi, and Hiromu Takahashi defeating Kazuchika Okada and Roppongi 3K. And then we also had the 8-man tag, second from the top, that saw Tanahashi, Kota Ibushi, Yuji Nagata, and Togi Makabe taking on Taichi, Zack Sabre Jr., Minoru Suzuki, and Doki, ending with Makabe pinning Doki with the King Kong knee drop. What were some of the standouts for you on this show? I would say that a lot of this was more so just about seeing a lot of guys that you haven't seen in several months.
Well, I really like the opener between Gabriel Kidd and Yota Tsuji, because I'm really interested in like the development of Gabriel Kidd, because he really like piques my interest. I'm really curious to see how he's going to develop over the next several years, what his like eventual character is going to be, what his kind of alignment within the company is going to be. So I was really interested in that. And I thought Tsuji looked good, looked like he was partaking in a lot of the Chanko Nabe in the dojo. It seems there. I like the second match. Like I really like the team of El Desperado and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. So it was really nice to see them work again. I thought they had really good, interesting interactions with Tomohiro Ishii, especially considering he's a heavyweight and they're juniors. And then, the last two matches I thought were really good. Fun matches, like nothing of consequence, but one of the highlights was like, I think, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but like Tetsuya Naito being like his own new inverted version of the Destino, which kind of looked like, Masato Tanaka's Diamond Dust move.
Like an inverted Destino, yeah. That seemed to be, I mean, the announcers were really reacting to it big, and so it seemed to be like a debut of at least a secondary, or at least like a lead up to another finisher.
Well, I mean, he just polished him off with the regular Destino, but didn't seem like he needed to. Like, Yo looked like he took that bump pretty hard on his head. Something
I really noticed was, I want to know how you guys feel about this, but like, I wasn't as bothered by the empty crowd with a New Japan show as I might be, for a Raw or SmackDown. And I do wonder why for me that might be. Part of it, I guess, maybe is because I'm already used to empty arena crowds so much. But I do, for me, like, I think the style of New Japan Pro Wrestling, there's always a lot going on. And I feel like it feels a bit more like a regular UFC fight. So that's less reliant on, let's say like crowds, less playing to the crowds in a standard type of, for instance, like a tag team match, that it didn't really bother me. How did you guys feel?
I think part of it is that, Japanese wrestling is so expressive in the ring with like making a lot of noises and yelling at your opponents and the such like that. So the wrestlers themselves are creating all this atmosphere and they're being really loud, and they're not pretending that there is an audience here, which is something you see in WB, for example. Also, I think the announcers did an amazing job of just being enthusiastic and just kind of projecting their enthusiasm to the audience at home. And especially Jushin Liger, he is such a treasure for doing this, kind of acting as a commentator, but also as a fan. He did the same thing at the last Korakuen Stardom show before they went on hiatus as well. Like, he was, so enthusiastic. He was part of the audience. He substituted, like, he was a substitute for the audience. And I think he did the same thing on here, even though he's like, being presented on a video screen as well. But I think both the in-ring talent and the commentators just created this really lively atmosphere that I think really made it stand above, anything you'll see on most American, especially WB broadcasts with empty arena shows.
Yeah, I mean, like they certainly like laid it in, and I think the Japanese announcers really added a lot to the presentation. I still feel like I've watched enough empty arena shows to last me several lifetimes over the last 3 months that it's never going to be anyone's preferred option. So I still think it's missing something, and I just found it to be a little jarring when we went from that awesome opening video, and you're just seeing like the Tokyo Dome crowds, and it's like we're back, and then boom, we go into this empty arena, and it was just I almost wish they saved this video for the Osaka shows, because it was such a fantastic video to start the show off with about that they've been gone for so long and now we're returning.
Shall we switch gears to the New Japan Cup?
Yeah, so that's going to be starting Tuesday morning. We have our 32-man tournament, and it's going to be kicking off with Togi Makabe versus Yota Tsuji, Tomohiro Ishii versus El Desperado, Toru Yano versus the Dark Horse, Jado, and Tomoaki Honma versus Hiromu Takahashi. So, of course, this is going to feature no foreigners, because no one can get into the country save for Zack Sabre Jr., who lives there, Gabriel Kidd, who's in the dojo, and to make up for the absent names, we have junior heavyweights making up a significant portion of the field. WH, what do you think about some of the standout matches in the opening round? And we'll get into some of your picks after as well.
I think, like, Ishii and Desperado should be good. Yano and Jado should be exceptionally bad. So there's something to be said about that. In the opening rounds, like, let's see, Nagata, Minoru Suzuki, I'm looking forward to that.
I think that's one that could go either way as well. Like, I expect Suzuki to win, but I could see it, like, Nagata and Okada could be really fun in the second round. I don't write that one off.
No, definitely. I think they're going to bring it. Those guys got unreal chemistry with each other and have for like over 10 years. So it's going to be good. And then over on the B side, the Golden Aces taking on Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr. in their respective singles matches. I think those should all be good. Sho continues his quest to topple Shingo Takagi. I don't think it's going to happen in this match, but that should be a good match as well. And then I'm looking forward to Kojima versus Evil, because I think this is, when Kojima's put in like a spotlight, position, he's going to deliver. And he's one of the few, New Japan quote unquote dads who can still really go at a high level, I think.
I thought he looked pretty good today.
He looked in really good shape. Like, he looked like someone that's been active during this time off and looked, I agreed with you, I thought that Kojima did look good today.
Yeah, I thought Sonata looked great too. I mean, like today, I think for me, I mean, it wasn't a show that featured, a lot of must-see matches, but it was just more so for me reminding myself, oh my God, Sonata is this good. Zack Sabre Jr. is this good. Kota Ibushi is this good. Minoru Suzuki is this good. Like, I've forgotten what these guys look like in ring, and today was a great reminder. I even enjoyed like Sonata in the brief little moments that he was in there with Ryusuke Taguchi, and so that might be even a first round match that I'd be curious to see.
I think that should be fun. I think they have good chemistry. Like, Taguchi, when he wants to be, is a very good wrestler too. So
looking ahead to the other side of the bracket, so the opening round will be on Tuesday and Wednesday this week, and then they'll have a couple days off before they resume on Monday on June 22nd. And that side, I think, has a lot of the depth of the tournament. We have Tanahashi versus Taichi, Kota Ibushi versus Zack Sabre Jr., Taguchi versus Sonata, and a rematch from last year's Best of the Super Juniors, the opening day of the tournament, Sho Tanaka versus Shingo Takagi. That's going to be an outstanding show with those 4 matches on Monday's card.
That's probably going to be like the best show of the opening rounds, I think.
Who do you see advancing between Shingo and Sho?
I think the long-term story for Sho is to keep on losing to Shingo Takagi. It's going to be kind of like the Jumbo Tsuruta Mitsuharu Misawa story. I see Shingo Takagi going pretty deep into this tournament, actually. Sho will get his when like they're ready to push him as a legit singles. I don't think he's there yet. I think they're still, pushing him as a tag team wrestler right now. So it's not Sho's time this year.
I do see the upset with Taichi beating Tanahashi. I don't expect that we're going to get Tanahashi, Kota Ibushi, or another Tanahashi Zack Sabre Jr. match. So I could see Taichi advancing and probably getting Ibushi in the second round. I can see that as well. I kind of can go either way with the Tanahashi Taichi match and Ibushi Zack Sabre matches, but like I kind of did my picks as kind of like my wish than what I think might actually happen, so in those cases, so I kind of go with Tanahashi, and then Tanahashi would face Ibushi in the second round. And who are your picks for the final set of first round matches on Tuesday? For group, sorry, my finals in the whole tournament, or just for let's just look at this. For Tuesday, we have Tenzan Yoshihashi, Yo versus Bushi, Satoshi Kojima versus Evil, and Goto versus Yujiro. Not the most outstanding show, but we'll see what we get on that day.
So I would go with Tenzan, Yo, Kojima, and Goto.
Okay. Do your brackets include a Tenzan Kojima meeting in the quarterfinals?
It does not. No.
Oh. Well, why don't you give us a look ahead then? Maybe let's advance a few rounds. Who do you see standing in the who is your final 4?
My final 4 are in Group A: Tomohiro Ishii and Kazuchika Okada, and then on the B side is Kota Ibushi and Hiroki Goto.
And then winning the whole thing.
Winning the whole thing, my man Hiroki Goto.
Goto, wow! This is this is WH Park making these predictions. This is not just anyone that we just picked to make these selections. Of course, the infamous tournament of 2018 was Zack Sabre Jr. running the table. If Goto does this, then I think WH once again on top of the New Japan Cup pick mountain.
What would be Goto's path for you?
Goto beats Kojima, he beats Tenzan, and he beats Ibushi, and then he beats Ishii in the finals. That's my path. The thing with why I picked Goto is I really think about, like, are they going to waste a real big money match on an Osaka-jo Hall that's only 1/3 full? I don't think so. I think, the fact that they're going to have fans allowed to be in the building is going to really, sell a lot of tickets, if not sell out what they're going to make available to the fans, right? So I don't think they're going to waste, Naito versus Okada, Naito versus Tanahashi, Naito versus, any Ibushi or anything like that for that kind of a show. I think they're going to wait till they're able to like have a higher capacity for their audience. So Goto's a safe bet. Like Goto will be a good match. Goto's like not wasting a money match necessarily. Also, it doesn't hurt Goto. It's never a bad thing to like push Goto to some degree, you know, in something like the New Japan Cup. And he is really Mr. New Japan Cup, isn't he, though?
How do you guys feel they will be treating the junior heavyweights amongst the heavyweights here? How far would you say like the strongest one may go, or will they kind of, you know, keep the status quo?
I think that you certainly with like Hiromu, I think that's the most interesting match on Tuesday, that Hiromu has to look solid and go over Honma, because traditional booking, it would be like Honma beating the junior heavyweight. And I think that on the first day of the tournament immediately establishes the junior heavyweights can beat the heavyweights. And while I don't imagine, I think Shingo and Hiromu are the two junior heavyweights that will get the preferential treatment in this tournament.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like Takahashi is like, you know, such a megastar regardless of what weight class he's in. And yeah, I see him going up until like, you know, the semifinals, and then he'll bow out to Ishii in my brackets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that, where I don't see any of them going to the finals, but I could see Takagi and Hiromu going at least a little bit deep, like to your final 8, maybe even 4. We'll see. So there you go. That is the New Japan Cup. In terms of the Osaka shows, WH, what are your thoughts on New Japan's strategy to open up the Osaka-jo Hall to a third of the capacity, which is not a small number? That's still around 4,000 people. Are you expecting, the capacity to be met of New Japan testing their limits of fans coming to these shows? Yeah,
I think these shows are going to sell out, to be honest with you, because I think there's such a hunger for you know, to go to a live event. And this is going to be one of the few live events where people can actually, you know, go inside the building. And, you know, New Japan has promised, and they've been promising, like, since they went on hiatus during the emergency lockdown, that if we come back, we're going to make sure the fans are safe, that the staff is safe, and the wrestlers are safe. And we're going to take every precaution necessary. I think, you know, they're going to probably announce, like, you have to get here, like, you know, doors open like 2 hours before normally. We're going to open them 4 hours early because it's going to take a long time to let people into the building. And I think when they leave, they're probably going to do staggering like departures, like, okay, this section you can leave, then wait, and then this section can leave. So, but I do think they're going to do very, very well as far as like attendance goes, for, you know, 1/3 capacity. Also, I think, you know, Osaka is a really good strategic location to draw from different parts of Japan, because they're kind of, you know, in the middle of Japan. Like, you can draw from Tokyo, from, you know, Yokohama, you can draw from like Fukuoka, from Ishikawa Prefecture, and like from Nagoya area and from Shizuoka area where I live. It's a really good central location for all these major metropolitan areas that to, you know, take the bullet train or whatever to go to Osaka to see the show.
Do you have any indication on how long it might take for other regions to open up?
Like
for crowds?
For crowds, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in Tokyo, just because, you know, there's always new cases, you know, like cases of infection in Tokyo happening almost daily. Not to like alarming degrees, but still enough where I would be like very cautious about opening up Tokyo. But I mean, that's not to say like other companies are running Tokyo with some limited number of fans, you know, like from your small indies to like your bigger companies like Noah and what have you. So, you know, Tokyo's pretty much open. Other regions, it's depend on those prefectures. I think they're putting it in the hands of the prefectures, like with, you know, guidelines from the federal government. I have no idea. Like, just for me, like I'm still waiting for, you know, my work to reopen, to be honest with you. So I don't know what's going to happen with wrestling per se, but Tokyo and maybe like Osaka are going to, you know, kind of be the places to go to watch live wrestling.
Well, WH, I want to thank you for stopping by to give us your predictions and some of your thoughts on New Japan's resuming their shows this week. We'll definitely be back before the tournament's up with a new post-Pro Res. We'll definitely get you back before the Osaka shows. And can you let our listeners know about your very successfully new new launch series, the long and winding Royal Road that has just been met with tremendous praise since you dropped episode 0.
Yeah, it was like really nice to see a lot of positive feedback for the prologue episode with Joseph Monsilio, where we look at the creation of the Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship, the most important title in the history of All Japan Pro Wrestling. And I'm really excited. I've got like some future guests lined up. I've already recorded episode 1. It's going to be sent up to you guys soon. I just need to get another file from my guest when he's ready to send it to me. I'll upload it to you guys. But yeah, I won't say who it is. We'll keep that a secret for now. But it should be a treat for some of the fans of post wrestling. Very familiar person to our listeners here. And I'm excited. Like I'm gonna get around to recording my profile episodes. Like the first one I'm gonna do in the next several months is going to be on Mitsuharu Misawa. I have a guest in mind for that. I talked to that person. I said, would you like to do that? And they said yes. So I'm excited about that. And it's just, I almost wish, John, I was doing this weekly, but then I thought about it and I thought, no, actually, I'm glad I'm doing it only monthly.
Work smart. That's the key. Longevity. That's what we want.
Quality, not quantity, right?
Oh, it's always quality from you, WH.
Brock Lesnar's schedule.
Yeah, that's if only I got the Brock Lesnar money, but that's neither here nor there. Can I just say one thing? One thing I didn't miss from yesterday's show, like I was like, I could have done without, and that's like the Bullet Club and their shitty gear, like Yujiro with his trash bag, Geto with his stupid fucking hat, and most especially Jado with his stupid fucking bandana, his stupid fucking t-shirt, his stupid fucking kendo stick, and especially those stupid fucking skeleton pants. Could have done without those. They could have stayed on hiatus, and I wouldn't have missed them.
Fuck that guy.
Fuck Jado.
Okay, thank you to WH Park for joining us, and that's going to wrap up a monstrous edition of Rewind to Raw, complete with more news, Wai. Are you ready?
Oh my God, more?
Can you handle more? So coming off what I had mentioned earlier about the tapings being not happening on Tuesday, Dave Meltzer reporting that the plan is for all key members of the staff that work the shows, as well as all the talent, to be tested on Tuesday, which would be the first COVID-19 testing the company has done. So, same as what I had been told, that they will be doing testing, but that's for all talent. So a good sign that they are at least conducting their first COVID-19 testing for everybody. So that's at least one.
Unreal, honestly. Like I know, yeah, it's a positive, but it's also just insane because they've done so many shows.
They're 3 months into this.
Oh man, yeah. But anyway, okay.
So anyway, that's the latest in WWE land. But that's going to end the show off. But coming up this week, man, we've got some great shows coming up, including Tuesday night. It is our Avengers Endgame panel. Myself and Wai are going to be joined by Nate Milton and Brent Chittenden to break down Endgame.
That's right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Certainly, it's the culmination of 2 years of podcasting that John and I started way back, and it'll be a big discussion. I look forward to talking about it with you and two of the most knowledgeable people I know about the MCU, and Brent and Nate. And you know what, John? I'm gonna breaking the news just keeps coming here.
Oh, just bring it.
We are going to debut a brand new post-wrestling t-shirt on this show, and we will announce it then. Well, I kind of announced it here, but we'll officially launch it when I launch the podcast. So, yeah, we'll get everybody's reaction perhaps on the show. So
there you go, everyone. That will be up for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe Tuesday night. Then we've got Rewind to Dynamite on Wednesday, along with Up Next, Rewind to SmackDown Live for all patrons on Friday, and then a new Rocky Maivia picture show coming out on Saturday. G.I. Joe 2 Retaliation is on the bill on Saturday with Nate Milton.
Awesome. A lot of Nate. For those of you who want to listen to our thoughts on the latest edition of The Last Ride, John and I will be talking about that on Rewind to SmackDown on Wednesday.
Rewind to Dynamite on Wednesday.
Rewind to Dynamite.
They all blend together at the end. All right. That's it for the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Tons of stuff that we had to get to on tonight's show. We'll speak with you on Tuesday night with Avengers Endgame.